Hi, everyone. I'm David Pepos, the writer of Spencer and Locke and Going to the Chapel over at Action Lab. And welcome to your Ringo Awards pre-show coverage. I'm excited to kick off today's festivities with Erica Schultz and Chris Campano, who have a number of Ringo Award nominations between the two of them. Welcome aboard, you guys. Congratulations on your nominations. How are you guys feeling today?
Thank you.
Thank you. What's up?
So yeah, I was going to say, so Erica, I know you're involved in a number of nominations, Best Writer, Best Series for Forgotten Home. Some of your collaborators, Natasha Altarisi, Marika Cresta, Cardinal Ray, also nominated, and also in Best Anthology for Strange Tales. Chris, you're nominated for Best Artist or Penciler, as well as Best Original Graphic Novel for The Adventures of Parker Reef. So yeah, first off, how are you guys feeling with these nominations?
You go first, Chris.
I think it's I don't know, it's kind of incredible. It just feels good to I promised I wouldn't say this, but it feels good to be acknowledged in the industry. It's a lot of drawing and writing when nobody's paying attention, and then all of a sudden people pay attention. And although you say you do it for the love of it, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't nice to know that people were paying attention a little bit. Feels good.
Erica, what about you? How are you feeling? Especially, I feel like you're kind of like Thanosing it with like all the infinity gems of the nominations. How does that feel to be sweeping the nominations so far?
I think it's, it, like Chris says, we're in comics because we love it, and being acknowledged is a big deal. It also gives me a little street cred with my students at the Kubert School. So I'm not like just the writing teacher. Now it's like, oh, she's the writing teacher and she's got a couple nominations. So it's like, yeah, now you really have to listen to me.
So for those who aren't familiar with the books that are being nominated, Erica, can you tell us a little bit about Forgotten Home? And then Chris, can you tell us a little bit about The Adventures of Parker Reef?
Forgotten Home is urban fantasy story that is Comixology Originals, and it takes place, it starts out in Montana, and there is a sheriff's deputy named Lorraine Adelet who is investigating a series of child kidnappings. Usually kids around between 10 and 12 are getting kidnapped, and there's no real pattern to it. But we learn that Lorraine actually comes from another world. She's not human. And she goes to the crime scenes and uses her abilities, her magic, and realizes that people from her old world are kidnapping these kids. So she has to go back home and try and get these kids back. And she didn't exactly leave on the best of terms.
Wow, that sounds really awesome. Chris, what about you? Can you tell us what's The Adventures of Parker Reef about?
Okay. So Adventures of Parker Reef is a story about a mother and son who pass away, and the son, 14 years later, wants to understand why the father didn't come with them. So his adventure is to go from where they are and try to make it back to where, the land of the living, to ask his father that question.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's like this adventure through the realm of forgotten souls and the nothing, and it's this whole big thing to get back. It's about family.
This has been very an unprecedented year as far as the comics industry, as well as really kind of the world at large is concerned. And you can see just for the fact that we're doing this event virtually as opposed to being in Baltimore. How have you guys been coping the last 7 months? How have you guys had to pivot as far as getting as far as your work and getting awareness around your work, especially in a world when we're all still sitting at home?
I gained about 12 pounds.
And that's how the word got out there.
Yeah.
And that's no, I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that, I was used to working from home on a lot of projects, but the conventions being in person really do help getting your work out there and meeting new fans and getting a larger fan base. So even though things are virtual and still accessible for people, it is a little difficult. I think it's more difficult now to, when you're at a convention, you can call somebody over to your table and talk to them and show them your work. I think it's a little more difficult just being online, because if someone's not already your follower, or they don't see it through like somebody retweeting, then they're not going to know that this is, out there.
Right. Chris, how about you? How have you been handling things the last 7 months?
Well, for me, I mean, even though I have, some credits with IDW or Dynamite and stuff like that, I'm really, the industry probably knows me, and I think of myself as an indie artist. So for me, the road and the shows and the hustle of the shows is kind of where I build my fan base and my audience, and where I make my money for the most part. So it was a transition to really figure out how to turn, being at home and working on indie stuff and, some commissions, how to turn that into kind of being on a show circuit, whether it was a lot of live drawing or if it was having like a Campana-con every other weekend or something like that. It was like, it's, I won't say that I don't like being home, because I love being home and not being on the road as much, but I really miss just the interaction, just the feel of being in a room with a lot of people who are, we're into the same stuff and nothing else matters. And we're just kind of, we're digging on the art and comics and all that and all those kinds of things. I guess social media has been the only way that we've really been able to reach out and try to make the hustle still work.
I feel like everybody's got a different answer to this question, but where do you see the future of comics, especially sort of as far as 2021 and 2022 are concerned? How do you see it post-pandemic?
I think comics are due for a big revival as far as kids and everybody getting back into it. I really think what we're learning a lot about ourselves with this pandemic is we might need less than we thought we needed, as far as like electronics and all these other things. We might just need people and really good stories and things to keep us going, and those connections that can happen, and that love of really good writing and really good art and things around us that we can enjoy when we don't have the ability to enjoy a lot of other outside stimuli. It could just be a really good book, and I think that creators, although we took a big hit like everybody else did, I think creators create. No matter what, we could be depressed. I mean, ParkGrief came out of the loss of my girlfriend and my son, so we create no matter what it is. And I think some of the best work you're going to see is going to come out of creators during this pandemic. And I think that'll bring people back. And I think people want things, want new things. I think it's going to get bigger. I think it'll be no longer, oh, that was a comic, I thought it was just a movie. I think it's going to be, you're going to see a lot of love for comics.
Erica, what about you?
No, I 100% agree what he's saying. This idea of like going back to, the core of a good story. There's a lot of like flash, and a lot of, well, nothing against the man, but what I like to say is like Michael Bay film, with just like explosions everywhere kind of thing, popcorn film kind of thing. There's a lot of stories out there, and that's fine. Like that is what it is. But I think coming back to a simple, solid core story that has characters that the audience can really gravitate toward, can really root for, can really feel a connection to. I think that's important. And like Chris said, going back to sort of like this idea of we don't need as much as we thought we did. We can survive on, I'm not going to say the bare minimum, but we can survive on a lot less than we had. And this is a big lesson, I think, for everybody. Yeah. And I think that, creators, we are going to find a way out of it. We'll find a way, because we're going to focus our energy into making new stories, into telling new, whether it's with characters that we've already written about or somebody else, but making new stories and making new inroads, because that's what we do to survive,
Lightning round before I have to switch to our next guests. What's next on your agenda, you guys? What do you guys have coming down the pike next?
I have the Legacy of Mandrake. Issue number 1 comes out actually this Wednesday. This new comic book day coming this Wednesday, the 28th. And the 0 issue is already up on Comixology, and it is for free. So you can read Legacy of Mandrake for free, 0 issue.
Nice. Chris, what about you?
I've got Parker 2, which is behind me.
Nice.
I have a couple of more covers lined up. I can say that I have one more Turtles cover coming, but I can't say what issue it is. And there's something I'm working on with the writer Garrett Gunn called Call the Ravens Home, which is like a Norse mythology book. And the hustle. You never know what next email is going to be.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, Erica, Chris, thank you guys so much
Thank you.
for spending some time with me at the Ringo's pre-show today. We've got Rylan Grant in the background, so let's bring him up. Rylan, buddy, how you doing?
Howdy. How you doing,
Good
man?
morning. I know it's bright and early for the both of us.
Yeah, still getting up to speed. The my 4-year-old had me up at about 6 a.m., so I'm running at half speed still.
I feel it. Rylan, you've got a lot going on right now. Not only are you involved with 4 different Ringo Award nominations, Best Series for Banjax, as well as Best Cover Artist, Best Colorist, and Best Letter for your team on Banjax, but you're also in the middle of a Kickstarter for the Peacekeepers. So yeah, first off, how are you feeling having so much going on for you at once?
It's being busy is good, particularly now, idle hands and all that. It just amounts to a lot of opportunity, and it's all good news. People are digging the Kickstarter. I mean, how do you take issue with 4 Ringo nominations?
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar with the series, tell us a little bit about Banjax and tell us a little bit about the Peacekeepers.
Yeah, well, Banjax is God, it can easily be described as kind of Death Wish with a superhero. You have a disgraced former superhero, kind of a hard-nosed Batman type, who finds out he has terminal cancer caused by using his powers. The irony of the situation is, in his mind, is that defending what he has deemed an ungrateful and unworthy city is now literally killing him. And so he takes a long look at his legacy. He's got 3 months to live. The city is still a cesspool. He decides he ain't going out like that. And he decides he's going to use kind of every last breath he has to kind of purge the city of villains before he dies. It's a two-hander. What's going on at the same time is that kind of the Robin to his Batman is kind of this guy who became the point and wink superhero ideal, once he was kind of moved out of the way. And this protege is now charged with bringing his old mentor in. The problem is he's not remotely up to it. And so over the course of the series, he kind of has to, become a man, become an actual hero. And it's a badass ride, man. I mean, every issue is a punch in the face, a punch in the gut, a punch, wherever else hurts. I just let loose on it, embraced all sorts of, crazy, different points of view, unreliable narrators, experimental elements. The second issue is told from the point of view of a man who hasn't slept in 7 days, and he's being driven mad by it. And so reality's kind of starting to bend around him. You don't know what's real and what isn't. It's fun. Yeah.
I definitely know that feeling about a reality bending all around us for lack of sleep. So it's one of those things. You even list yourself in your books as a director / writer, and I know that you are very hands on as far as assembling your teams, and the fact that your entire Banjax team has been nominated for Ringo Awards this year. How does that make you feel? How did you kind of connect with these with your team, and how do you feel knowing that they've all been nominated for the big awards tonight?
It was a huge deal, and yeah. So last year my book Aberrant, my last book Aberrant, was nominated for 2 Ringos, and then we won another one. We won Best Villain. And then we were nominated for Best Single Issue and Best Writer. And the Best Single Issue, Best Writer, a lot of people were like, "Oh, you're nominated. But I had this great team who, obviously they had a lot to do with the best single issue nomination and the Best Villain nomination. And then, of course, making me look good as a writer. But I felt like they didn't get the praise that they deserved the last go round.
Sure.
And that bothered me. And so my mission this go round was to make sure that they got, their due. And it's well deserved. I mean, the art is just gorgeous. and they carried me on their backs with this one. And so yeah, it's Fabio Alves and Edson Ferreira, who are this amazing Brazilian team who will be drawing Marvel books in a couple of years. And HDE, who was a letterer in the UK, who he letters all my books. He lettered Aberrant, and I have about 4 other titles in the pipe. And he's lettered all of those. He's lettered the Peacekeepers, which is on Kickstarter now.
So, this has been a crazy year, both in terms of the comics industry and kind of the world around us. And I wanted to ask, normally we'd be doing this show in Baltimore. We'd be hanging out over there. The fact is that we're all kind of staying put at home. How have you kind of changed the way that you do business this year? How have you had to pivot in the fact that there's no comics conventions and that the industry itself has kind of contracted a little bit?
Yeah, well, it's been felt by me doubly because my day job is I write movies and TV shows, big action movies that Erica's so fond of, so my business, both of these businesses, my comics business and my movie TV business, has pivoted like crazy. I mean, it's I am on a Zoom meeting, I don't know, probably for half the day now, a producer, a writer. And the thing is, the odd thing is that it has kind of put a lot of time back into my day because LA is this massive place and the traffic is horrendous. And so normally I'd have to go, to a film meeting and I would spend an hour in the car each way. Now I just kind of, I step away from my daughter for a minute. I fire up Zoom. I knock the meeting out. In terms of the comic stuff, we have all found ways to cope. I mean, I desperately miss cons and I desperately miss the interaction, but, there are great online cons. The guys doing this con did a couple of cons called the Mainframe Comic Con that were just stellar. And, I helped wherever I could organizing them. And so there have been, those sort of approximations. David Avallone and I started doing a podcast called The Writer's Block that we're actually doing later today at 5 p.m. on this feed, 5 p.m. Eastern. The thing that we missed more than anything about the con experience was sort of the after party. They call it bar con or whatever, where you work the floor the whole day, and then we creators would kind of get together afterwards, go across the street, and kind of shoot the shit at a bar. And so our podcast is, it's about an hour of creators just kind of sitting around, and it sort of starts out with us talking about the state of the business and what's going on, but then it usually ends up degenerating to us arguing about old Star Trek episodes. And so we're doing that later today with you, of course, and with Stan Sakai, who's like a personal hero of mine, and Troy Little, and a few other people are going to pop in. So it's going to be good.
No, I'm very excited for doing that later today. So thank you for inviting me, because also a huge Stan Sakai fan, and I'm a little bit of a Rylan Grant and David Avallone fan myself. I guess what's next for you? I mean, what do you have coming down the pike? I know you've got a Kickstarter running, the Peacekeepers. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, the first thing is the Peacekeepers, of course. That's on Kickstarter right now. You can go to Kickstarter and search the Peacekeepers. You can search my name, or you can go to bit.ly/Peacekeepers. And it's this story that I've wanted to write for 15 years, but kind of couldn't. Hollywood doesn't let you do a lot of different stories right now, and comics is a crazy game. But finally found a way to put my dream project, in book form, and it's wonderful. It is a love letter to, dark and decidedly quirky crime dramas like Fargo or No Country for Old Men. So if you love those films, if you love case season police dramas like True Detective or The Wire, if you dig Elmore Leonard novels like I do, and if you are a fan of comic masterpieces like Criminal or 100 Bullets, you're going to love this thing. So the first 2 issues are available right now on Kickstarter. And that's kind of a runaway train right now. I've been really enjoying that ride. So, go check that out. Definitely. And, as I alluded to before, I have like 4 other titles in the pipe. And they're coming fast, and they're coming strong. I think like everybody, that's in this game, kind of hit a big speed bump. I had 2 titles that were pretty much set to, be announced, released with big publishers, and then and then COVID hit, and it was pencils down, and there were a lot of layoffs and firings, unfortunately, and everything kind of got thrown into question.
Sure.
And so now just sort of starting to pick up all the pieces on those. I mean, it looks like we have a publisher for one of those titles.
Nice.
And so I got a lot of work. And I think it's a lot of good work. The last 2 books were nominated at these Ringo Awards, and so yeah, if you're a publisher out there and you're looking for some hardworking folks, give us a call. We got some good material for you.
Where do you see the industry going next post pandemic?
Wow, that's a big question. I'm going to try not to take up all the time on this feed, but it's we have necessarily had to change, and I think we've already done a very good job of changing. I've talked about this on the podcast before. I mean, I think that the problem is that there is less mainstream opportunity for guys like you and I right now, and that may change. Publishers have had to really protect themselves, right? I mean, it's a hard go for them, and so they've had to pare back slates and just fewer spots on those publisher benches and stuff like that. But I think that we're entering this era of creator empowerment. We saw a similar thing in the NBA for about the last 10 years, where guys like LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard and Kevin Durant, they kind of wrestled control away from the owners, and they started deciding where they play and who they play with. And I think that we're seeing the same thing in comics with creators. You and I, we used to have to wait for permission from a big time publisher to be able to do our books. But there's so much other opportunity out there right now that we no longer have to. I mean, I did it with The Jump on Kickstarter, and I'm doing it again with Peacekeepers. And you did it recently with the OZ, which was just an incredible book, and this runaway success on Kickstarter. And if we have a book that we want to make, we no longer have to wait for permission. We no longer have to wait for a publisher's blessing. We can kind of go out, make our own book, take it directly to the consumer via sites like Kickstarter, and we can make a little money, which is kind of rare in this business, all too rare. And we can get some incredible recognition. We can find an audience, and I guess the irony of the whole situation is that you do well on Kickstarter, and then the publishers start banging on your door.
Right.
And so all of that traditional publishing success comes because you kind of decided, well, I don't need that right now. And we're seeing it happen. There are the peons like you that are doing it, but then Scott Snyder is going to pick. He made $218,000 on Kickstarter. Kevin Eastman, made $125,000 a couple of times. Keanu just made $1.5 million on Kickstarter, and so you're seeing even like the big dogs go to Kickstarter and sites like that because it's a better deal in a lot of ways. But then they move on and they have this second massive success in traditional publishing, and it ends up kind of being the best of both worlds, and it actually ends up helping the publishing machine. Where I think that these two machines, they used to be at odds with each other, and I feel like it's all been accelerated because of this COVID thing. They've kind of made friends with each other, and they're living in this wonderful harmony. One is feeding off the other in this great way, and you've seen publishers like Boom, like Scout, really kind of embrace this model. And it's helped everybody. It's helped, it's helped the publishers. It's helped Kickstarter. It's helped guys like you and I. It's certainly helped Keanu and Kevin and Scott. And I think it's wonderful. And so I think you're gonna, it is a bold and brave new world right now, and I think you're gonna see a lot more of this moving forward.
Rylan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us this morning. I'm excited to hop on the writer's block with you later today. If you haven't checked out his work on Banjax, if you haven't backed the Peacekeepers, please do so now. I've got waiting for us Eric Palicki, Joe Corallo, and Tyler Chin Tanner, the masterminds behind the best anthology nominated Deadbeats. So fellas, thank you so much for joining me. How are you guys feeling with this nomination?
It's good. It's nice to be nominated. Yeah, you guys feeling good about it?
It's just good. Nice to be asked.
For those who haven't read the Deadbeats anthology, fill them in. Give the quick pitch as to what this very unique and excellent anthology is all about.
Who wants to do that? I think it should be one of you guys.
I think it should be Joe.
Okay, Joe, it's you.
I think I should get coffee. But no, it's a musical themed horror anthology. It's a little bit of a throwback. We we wanted to do something that was horror that was also fun. So we created this shopkeeper character who runs a haunted record store. And they sell instruments and other stuff. A lot of stuff you really shouldn't sell because it turns out it's haunted or cursed. And so she regales us with stories about stupid people that got cursed haunted things.
I love it. I feel like you guys had a story. What was it? It was the cursed saxophone of Skosferatu.
Yes.
That's probably an all-time great title. So kudos to you guys. Can you talk a little bit about the process of sort of getting this murderer's row of talent that you assembled for this book? Because I know you guys especially, you guys have really staked out a nice claim on sort of these prestige anthologies. So talk a little bit about how you brought such a wide variety of artists and writers and creators together.
Well, Ryland, who you just had on, talked at length about BarCon, right? And about sort of, the working the floor all day and then working the bar all night at conventions, which is, something that I think we've all really missed in 2020. But, you do that for a decade or so and you meet a lot of people, you make a lot of friends, your Rolodex fills up. And when the opportunity to do these anthologies comes up, it's just a matter of, scrolling through that list of names and figuring out who's a good fit for what project.
Yeah, and we like to get a good mix of people who've been in the industry for a little while and some newer talent who maybe aren't super green but have been doing their own thing, a little more independent. Mix that up a little bit. Yeah.
Tyler, I was actually going to ask you because a Wave Blue World feels like a real incubator for these amazing anthologies. You've been doing so many of them, and I was curious. A lot of publishers kind of steer away from that, and I was curious what made you lean towards saying we're going to make a Wave Blue World a place that we can do these amazing anthologies.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we take on each year to do one or two anthologies, as well as a few creator-owned or in-house stuff. Mostly just because they're fun. Kickstarter makes it easier. You get a lot of people together. It's almost just for that event itself. I mean, it's nice to have these in our back catalog and everything, but just the Kickstarter and the direct to fans and then get it into shops. It's just a lot of fun. It's where comics are kind of going in terms of Kickstarter, digital platforms, doing things like this online, connecting with people all over the world through new technology. It just seems to work really well. We enjoy it. So we're just keeping doing it. As long as the demand's still there, people are happy for it, which it seems to be each Kickstarter. You kind of have to be like, all right, I hope everybody's down for another one.
Sure.
But it's been positive feedback. So as long as people are enjoying it, creators are enjoying being part of it, we'll keep doing it.
I'd also like to add that since Tyler started doing a lot of these anthologies, we've noticed DC is doing a lot more anthologies lately too. And I'm not saying that they got the idea from Tyler, but look at the timeline.
I think DC's just been copying me since I got started, following their business plan after.
Not to make anybody choose between their babies, but were there any stories in the Deadbeats anthology that particularly stood out to you that you either thought this is an amazing concept or this is a hilarious concept or this is just I'm jealous that somebody else came up with this concept?
You don't make us choose yet? Yeah, you got an idea.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, one of the things that was nice that stood out was being able to like reunite Rachel Pollack, Richard Kaysen, and John Workman, all three who had worked on Doom Patrol together. So to get all of them back for the first time, and it was like 26 years since we
Wow.
all worked together. It was kind of a a
Historic.
highlight. Yeah, it's historic, and it's a way for me to answer this question in a way that people can't really push back against.
Mhm.
And it's like it's not really copping out, but I'm totally copping out.
You know what, I'll bite the bullet here. I think the story that really excited me, especially during the the script review and editing process, was Trace Dean and Kyler Clodfelter's "Hey Darling, Do You Gamble."
Mhm.
Those are both names that I think in the next couple of years we'll be hearing a lot more from both of them, and it was really cool to give them this platform.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a lot of them. Gold Dust Woman was fun. Not just to pick one out again. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying one's better than the other. Regine Sawyer and
sure.
Tony Sanders. And then we did an animation. There's a pole dancing, this thing right here,
Yeah.
which was fun. So that was really neat too. That stood out as being unique. But they were also good. I mean, there wasn't a bad note in this whole collection.
Oh yeah, and I really liked. I thought like in terms of like a different kind of story in the book. What Danny Lore and Marie Anger did in their Apocalypse demo, it was probably one of the more like atmospheric kind of horror stories in the book, in terms of like, it was a little more like Escape from New York than like a typical sort of
Right.
like horror story, and that was nice to have in the book.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of the nice things about anthologies like this is you give people a theme, whether it's horror or with some of our other anthologies, some of the broad science fiction themes, and people sort of approach those themes from such oblique angles, and it's really cool to see the spectrum of stories that come out of anthologies like this.
Yeah, we had like multiple like romance stories in this musical themed horror book,
Right.
and a couple that like just like genuinely like pulled at your heartstrings, which I don't think people necessarily expected when they picked up this book, which is great.
Curious, what's you guys' favorite horror movies?
So this is a little bit of people argue with me on this, but my favorite horror movie is Silence of the Lambs. Some people will tell me it's not a horror movie, but people get eaten in that movie, so I feel like it counts.
Yeah, people say the same thing to me about Pee-wee's Big Adventure. But my God, I have a few all-time favorites. Suspiria, and I also really like the remake. I know some people are divided on that, but I really like both a lot. The first Halloween movie, one of the best slashers of all time, as part of like the worst slasher franchise of all time.
No, the first one, that's the one that Rob Zombie directed, right?
Yeah, that's the first one is the Rob Zombie directed, yeah. And then and then I just really liked some recent stuff too, like The Witch. I thought was excellent. I'll always go back to something like The Shining. I watched that probably when I was too young, and still enjoy it. The first Alien, Psycho, are all favorites of mine.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add to that. Get Out was really good. That was a recent one. I'm not like a super classic horror person. I mean, I hear it's a good movie, I'll go see it. Yeah.
Right. So it's been a crazy year as far as the comics industry is concerned, as far as the world is concerned, and normally we'd be doing this, we'd be hanging out at a bar at Baltimore right now. So how have you guys had to change the way you do business this year, since everybody's staying at home, since there's been no cons, since we've had industry contractions, like even the temporary Diamond shutdown? How have you had to pivot this year to sort of make things work?
I don't know that we pivoted too much. I mean, we definitely took a pause and we're like, okay, things are getting a little crazy. And so we sort of took our time, restructured things, just priorities. What do we really need to spend money on? I wouldn't say we increased social media too much, but there's a little more focus on that. Direct sales through our website have been really good.